Good evening, this is Atmospheric Alex here, back with another weather forecast video. Thank goodness all issues I've been having over the past week have been resolved with the Wi-Fi, and I was a bit busy and everything like that. I'm finally back and motivated to do semi-regular uploads here on the Atmo Alex channel. And today's video will be a little bit different as we finally have some tropical weather activity to talk about. Before it kind of started downtrending on the models, we're still going to go over it, just in case it does anything. I doubt it, but we do have a 0% chance of development over the next 2 days and a 20% chance of development over the next 7 days. That's something to keep in mind. And as for all the weather across the US over the past few days, it has been extremely active, especially on the severe side of things. We were talking about a very significant tornado outbreak that occurred in South Dakota and up into Minnesota the other night, where we had potentially another contender of the tornado of the year, though it did in fact destroy quite a lot of stuff. I think there was a house that was very badly damaged, so anyone who got impacted by that, I hope and I wish you all have a very fast recovery. It has been very wild out there over the past few days. And then of course across the rest of the US, just a bunch of daytime showers and thunderstorms, a lot of severe weather out there as well, especially down here across the southeast. And then I even want to note just a little bit here, we do have our monsoon activity beginning to ramp back up in the desert southwest areas like Arizona. So out there you may be seeing some strong to severe storms right now, so please stay weather aware in those areas for the next probably week as we continue through this pattern. Alright, anyways, we're going to look at our National Hurricane Center's tropical weather outlook here. Haven't done this in a very long time, so it's nice to see it back again. We do have a little bit of a disturbance down here near Florida. We're not talking about very high chances of development here, just a measly little 20%, so nothing really much to worry about there. And as we go through our models here, this is our European model. You can see a frontal system kind of draped right through this area here. It's not that strong, but it is enough, as you can see, to get a ton of storms going across portions of the southeast and mid-Atlantic tomorrow. That's something we're going to talk about later in the video. This front continues moseying on down south, and it just becomes really hard to see at this point, I'll be honest. We have some spin that tries to get going over here, but it is very, very weak. In fact, this is not even a tropical disturbance hardly at this point, so very low intensity for this system. You can see it falling apart there. This is going into around Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of this week. But it continues spinning there, doing whatever it wants, and then severe weather really ramps up again for a lot of the US. We'll talk about that later. Okay, the GFS model here. You can see our frontal system a lot more defined. You can see it kind of latches on a little area of spin right within here, dumping a ton of rain possibly over the Gulf and maybe the western coastline of Florida here. That's something to watch. And then it just kind of, there's something here, but it's so weak, it's really not worth talking about just yet. So not much is expected. Our icon model tries to show something a little bit more, but it's still very weak. You could definitely see your area of spin right down here. It tries to get going, with some rainfall associated with, again, this is just not going to be that strong, and so really not too concerning at all. You can see that area of spin moving onshore into Georgia, South Carolina, bringing into some rain. Flooding is going to be a big time risk with this. If this actually tries to develop into anything remotely tropical, that's just something maybe we'll keep an eye on, right? Now, we're going to really quickly breeze on through our tropical weather triangle. I'm bringing this back from last year. Basically, it's like this up here. We have our sea surface temperatures right at the top of the triangle. So we're looking at this right now, and you can see in the area where we are expecting development, sea surface temperatures will be between 29 and 30 degrees Celsius. So talking about the mid 80s in terms of water temperatures. And over here where it could redevelop, we're talking about temperatures around 29 to 29.5, so low to mid 80s there. And look at further north here, already cranking into your upper 80s in some areas. That is something we're going to have to watch for throughout this hurricane season. We're going to move on to our relative humidity factor here, which is going to be down here, really going to be, whether or not we have moist or dry air in this system. Well, we're going to be talking about this here. We have a moist air mass currently across the southeast. That's why you're seeing daily storms. As that front pushes on through, very dry air is going to be associated with it here. Look at that. In between your mid and upper levels of the atmosphere, you're definitely going to be talking about some drier air. And where this tropical system could form is right down here at sea, but look at all this dry air that kind of keeps pushing on it. We could see a little bit of spin trying to develop here. We have our moist air right here and our dry air right here. So something maybe more subtropical would develop out of this, but too much dry air really bogging down on our system here and causing it to not develop nearly as quickly or at all. We may not see anything from this at all. How about your wind shear? That is going to be another thing over here, the WS here. So what we're going to be seeing here is it's a different color table, but we're going to be looking at it. You could see, we're talking about quite a bit of wind shear with this system. Even when it tries to get going right over here, you can see your low pressure indicator. So right here, this is what we're looking at. Look at all of your strong wind shear ripping ahead of it in your upper levels, around 50 to 60 knots. That is extremely unfavorable. You really want anything below 20 knots on this scale here. So your center of circulation is basically going to initially maybe try and be a bit more stacked like this, but your wind shear is going to blow it off center and you're going to have this, tilt. So it's not going to allow your warm, moist air to go directly into the center of your storm, but rather off to the side of it. So you'll be feeding the wrong part of it. So definitely quite unfavorable out there for this system. What do your ensembles say? We're going to look at your EPS here. And you can see there's nothing over here. It just doesn't form until it gets over here, where it gets a little more aided by your frontal system, but it is so weak, barely even a tropical disturbance at this point in time. As we go into Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and yeah, it's really not much at all. How about your GEFS? This is honestly quite laughable. You do see a little bit of a low pressure center that tries to develop down here, but it's not going to make it that far, especially as it moves over land. That's another thing to consider. And you can see it tries to redevelop and just not seeing much of a signal, right? Looked a lot more impressive yesterday than it did today. But like I said, really the main hazard with this is going to be flooding rainfall. If you get a big time pop-up thunderstorm and you're under it for an hour, you could be talking about significant rainfall rates. So, in these areas down here, definitely need to be monitoring the forecast here, as we could see some extremely heavy rainfall out of some of these storms, as you'll have elevated humidity and moisture values aloft. Now we're going to move on to part 2 of the video. Of course, we're going to be talking about a severe weather risk here, right? Because Mother Nature doesn't know when to quiet down. We're going to be talking about a slight risk of severe weather tomorrow across Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, into New York here. That is where we're going to be seeing it, in those areas there. And then some risk further north, further south. Definitely going to be talking about a wind risk. You saw there, no tornado risk. A 15% chance of wind and not much of a hail risk either, so that is good news. Now, as we go ahead and time it out on our HRRR model, this is what the radar could look like tomorrow afternoon. And we're going to start off here by talking about quite a cluster of strong to possibly severe thunderstorms rumbling on through Ohio, West Virginia here. Look at Charleston potentially tomorrow morning getting impacted. And that is not a guarantee, but you just got to watch out for this. Look at your linear segments developing there. You can see further down south here, we do have some thunderstorms popping off in East Tennessee along the plateau, etching into the valley, likely weakening because storms that go over the plateau encounter sinking air normally and die off. On the other side of the mountains here near Asheville, we're talking about another cluster of strong storms. Up here in Kentucky, look at that. Some severe weather possible up near, London, Corbin area, Pikeville, up in those areas there. Some other areas across North Carolina, we're looking up here now towards D.C., Baltimore as well. Definitely some severe weather being possible, if not even probable, in some of those areas. As we go into like 4, 5, look at that. Very intense storm there. 6 p.m., just so many areas of strong to potentially severe thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. I could just keep circling these. I mean, we're going to be talking about a widespread event here. So please, if you want, you could turn your emergency alerts on your phone and crank your weather radios on high. I mean, it's not going to be that much of a crazy risk day or anything, but just kind of keep you informed. Those are two ways I'd recommend in doing so. And yeah, I mean, this just continues here and continues, and finally by 3 a.m., this is all off the coast, thank goodness. Further up to the north here, what are we looking at? As we move into, say, New York State here, got some storms trying to pop off near Buffalo, Rochester. Not a forecast that could quickly change. And then further south here, yeah, take a look at those storms moving into Philadelphia here. Definitely going to be quite significant in nature. New York City getting really close. The model doesn't show much happening by you. That doesn't mean it won't, though. Again, this is just a model, so just know that there will be storms in your general area, and they could wind up directly on top of you going into your evening commute tomorrow. And you could see kind of moving on through. How about your ingredients for tomorrow? They're not going to be high at all, of course. I mean, well, this is the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast we're talking about. Just some greens and yellows. So enough for severe weather, but definitely nothing to really write home about here. And then East Tennessee, some more elevated parameters. Yellows and oranges on the plateau, so certainly going to be something to watch. And then this just continues to do whatever it wants. I don't really know, right? And then dies off by the night. Unfortunately, we're not done after this. We have even more severe weather coming up going into July. As we look at our European model, our extended look here at our storm energy, you could definitely see some of it building across your northern plains and even on into places like Saskatchewan there and Manitoba in Canada. And we're going to be talking about this starting on July 3rd, where we have a chance of severe weather with 3,000 to 4,000 storm energy. So certainly going to be severe weather risks up there. And continuing on through, look at this. A little frontal system moves through, and look at that. More severe weather definitely becoming more possible on the 5th. And like the 6th here, and it really just continues. Look at all your storm energy. Wow. It really reminds me, we've seen this before, and just remember how much severe weather has been occurring in these areas, and we're probably going to see it again. So just know that your summertime activities may be delayed or even canceled because of this weather coming up. And this just continues, a big bathtub here of hot storm energy. And again, the northern plains, just a bit of a hot zone up here for more significant activity. And maybe something a little more significant here. Got a ridge here. Storms could ride down like this. Could we potentially see maybe some Boeing segments out of this riding down to the southeast? We'll have to see. A significant severe weather event or two cannot be ruled out. Tons of storm energy. And yeah, really just continues, maybe quieting off into a mid-July just temporarily. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to my little corner of the weather community, and share this with friends, family on social media who may want the information. Now, with that said, you have a wonderful night, everyone, and stay weather aware for the severe weather coming up and maybe even the tropical weather, just enhanced rainfall concerns if you're along, say, the west coast of Florida and maybe a bit more inland as well that we're going to have to watch for. Have a wonderful night, everyone.